The smell that came at night. In our village, nights were always quiet, too quiet, until the smell began. It wasn't the normal scent of animals or hay. It was thick, metallic, and rotten. It always came from my neighbor's barn. No one questioned it. No one dared. A barn with no animals. The strange thing was simple. My neighbor owned a barn, but no animals. No cows, no sheep, no horses. Yet every night the sounds came. Hooves on wood, heavy breathing, and something dragging across the floor. The neighbor who never slept. My neighbor never slept. His lights stayed on until dawn. When asked, he smiled too slowly and said, "They eat better at night." Eat what? The first screams. One night I heard it clearly. Not an animal. A human scream, cut short, like a mouth was forcibly closed. The barn doors slammed shut on their own. Footprints in the mud. The next morning, muddy footprints surrounded the barn. Bare feet, too many, and none of them led away, only toward the barn. The locked stall. Curiosity won. I crept closer and peeked through a broken plank. Inside were stalls, but chains hung from the ceiling instead of ropes. Something moved in the shadows, something standing on two legs, but bent like an animal. They're still growing. That night, my neighbor caught me watching. He whispered calmly, "They're still growing. Don't disturb them." Behind him, something slammed its body against the barn wall. The barn breathes. From that day on, the barn felt alive. Its walls pulsed, its floor creaked like ribs expanding. At night, voices whispered my name from inside. What they were fed. I learned the truth from an old man in the village. The barn wasn't for animals. It was for people who were fed something else until they forgot how to be human. The door opened. One stormy night, the barn door opened by itself. Figures crawled out, twisted, hunched, breathing like cattle. My neighbor stood smiling and said, "Now they're ready to roam." The first night after entering the barn changed everything. The air inside felt thick, almost solid, pressing against the lungs. Daniel noticed scratches on the walls that had not been there before. Deep, uneven marks, as if made by fingernails far too large to be human. Somewhere in the darkness, something shifted its weight. The sound was slow, deliberate, and aware of his presence. At dawn, Daniel returned home, but sleep never came. From his window, he could see the barn door slightly open, even though he remembered closing it. A faint light flickered inside, pulsing like a heartbeat. When he blinked, the light vanished, yet the feeling of being watched remained. Animals began disappearing from nearby farms. No blood, no tracks, just empty pens and broken locks. The neighbors whispered about wolves, but Daniel knew better. Wolves did not leave symbols carved into wood. Wolves did not whisper names in the dark. One evening, Daniel heard movement behind his house. Heavy footsteps circled the yard, stopping just outside his bedroom wall. A low breathing sound followed, wet and uneven. When he turned on the light, the sound stopped instantly, as if whatever it was had learned. Driven by fear, Daniel returned to the barn with a flashlight and a recording device. Deep beneath the hay-covered floor, he discovered a hidden hatch. The wood was old, stained dark, and warm to the touch. warm despite the cold night air. The hatch led to a narrow underground chamber. The walls were lined with hooks, chains, and old farming tools sharpened beyond normal use. At the center stood a feeding trough, but no animals were present. Instead, something had eaten there recently. The smell was unbearable. A sound echoed behind him. Not footsteps, dragging. Daniel turned just in time to see a shape retreat into the shadows. It moved wrong, bending where joints should not bend. The recording device captured a single whisper before shutting off. "Stay." The neighbor finally spoke. He stood at the fence one morning, smiling too calmly. He warned Daniel never to enter the barn again. His eyes, however, were sunken, hollow, and carried a quiet terror, as if he was not the master of that place, but its prisoner. That night, the barn doors slammed open on their own. A scream echoed across the fields. Not human, not animal. Windows rattled, dogs howled, and then fell silent. Daniel watched as a tall silhouette stood inside the barn doorway, unmoving, waiting. The town's power went out. In the darkness, voices filled the air, calling from different directions. Some sounded like neighbors, others sounded like people long dead. The barn light flickered again, brighter than before, inviting. Daniel approached despite every instinct screaming to run. Inside the barn, the walls were no longer wood. They pulsed softly, breathing. The chains rattled by themselves. The feeding trough was full again. The creature revealed itself slowly. It was not one being, but many, fused together, reshaped by years of feeding. Faces surfaced and sank back into its form, mouths opening in silent screams. It recognized Daniel. The neighbor's voice echoed from the darkness. He had tried to feed it animals, then strangers, then parts of himself. It was never enough. The barn was not built to contain livestock. It was built to contain hunger. As the creature moved closer, the ground trembled. Daniel realized the barn was only the surface. Beneath it lay something ancient, something that had waited patiently for someone curious enough to open the door. At sunrise, the barn was gone. In its place stood an empty field, perfectly normal. The neighbor had vanished, but some nights, when the wind is right, Daniel still hears chains moving underground, slow, patient, and